It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
Hello, children of the night. Welcome back to Blood and Guts, HHN. With me, as always, Mad Matt. How's it going, Mad Matt?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, Evil Ad, because we get to talk about the remake of The Fog. Oh, wait, no, that's not right.
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. We're talking about the original, 1980, John Carpenter,
Yeah.
The Fog. That's right. And you know, this, man, what a classic film
Yes.
this is.
And what's great about it being a classic film, they didn't think at the time that it was really going to be as special as it turned out to be, which is makes it that much more special to me. That it's just a little gem back in 1980, just like you said, low budget horror film.
Yep.
Love it.
And they had such a stellar cast. They had reshoots.
Mm-hmm.
They had all kinds of hiccups.
Yeah.
All kinds of effects. Driven performances. In this thing. And,
Yes.
And it just, we get what this great cinematic masterpiece, The Fog.
Absolutely. So, no better way to start than start talking about like the pre-production of The Fog. So we know that the original idea actually came from to John Carpenter. They said when he was actually visiting Stonehenge,
Yep.
and then also he wanted to homage the film, The Trollenberg Terror. Now, I've never seen that film,
No.
but I know from reading and doing research on it, it actually has some creatures that do come out of a fog too. So that's where he got that. But he said that him and Deborah Hill were on a vacation in Stonehenge, and just this fog bank rolled in and rolled over everything, and they had in their mind, what if there was something in here that could kill us?
Yeah, and I know that I was actually this week researching. If you go, it's a fun fact. Side fact: if you go onto Wikipedia and you type in ghost ships,
Yeah.
it'll actually bring up a list of ships that have been abandoned or lost. Maybe they found the ship with no crew aboard, kind of thing. So you think about all this maritime type of stuff, like especially if you're an HHN fan, Dead Man's Pier comes to mind.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so that's what got us going down this rabbit hole and decided to talk about The Fog. But let's talk a little bit about the man himself, Dean Cundey, cinematographer, who brought this, shot this in anamorphic widescreen Panavision.
And why did he do that?
Because it was low budget, but they wanted to give it the feel of a big budget feature without spending that extra coin, of course.
Right.
So to the viewer, it seems like everything's more broad.
Right.
More vivid, and it does paint a palette. But Dean Cundey is the kind of cinematographer I think that he could paint a palette, with anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just great. So
yeah, to piggyback off that too, we know that Rob Bottin done the special effects for this movie, and he's actually given a lot of credit to Dean Cundey. He goes, sure, I'm not gonna lie, my special effects were great. He goes, but special effects mean nothing if you don't know how to shoot it on film.
Shoot it and light it, man.
Exactly, and he said that's where he praises. And obviously, Dean Cundey's won multiple Oscars. We were discussing earlier, even though a lot of people don't like it, I love the movie Nothing But Trouble.
Nothing But Trouble.
Shoots
I
that
love
movie.
it.
And you can't talk about at least the way the movie is shot for Nothing But Trouble. It's shot fantastically. He was always, in the early years, he was Carpenter's go-to man. So,
Yep.
As usual, during production, Dean Cundey was at the top of his list to get here to shoot this movie.
Yep, and Rob Bottin with makeup and his team, they're all very awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was watching this behind-the-scenes footage, too, where I believe John Carpenter there was some kind of meeting going on or something like that was going on, and Rob Bottin thought, he was going to be fired. So he was sitting down in the meeting, and John Carpenter, said to him, he said, stand up. And of course you're like, oh, shit, what did I do? How tall are you? And, when he told him, then he was like, you know what? You're going to play our heavy. You're going to play our villain in this.
The captain.
Yeah, the captain. So now you get to do makeup on yourself, have your team do the makeup, and man, it just worked out. It's like a series of small I don't want to say mistakes, but a series of small coincidences that led to
Yeah.
the greatness of this film.
That's right, because like I mean, we know during the pre-production, like I said, they filmed this during 1979. It was his first project after Halloween, and like you're talking about all the coincidences, how things lined up, and it
Yep.
just worked out perfectly. One thing, like John done a great job in writing this movie, and it's just think like the little homages he done, not only just homages to other movie that we talked about, that Trollenberg Terror, but homage and people he's worked with by giving them character names throughout this movie and write them in. So you actually got a character named Tommy Wallace, Dan O'Bannon, Nick Castle,
Nick Castle,
yeah,
yep.
Miss Kubritz, which is after Richard Kubritz, like like that. It's just little touches like that. I'm surprised Dean Cundy didn't have a character in this movie. Yeah. So, like I said, just little touches like that. That like if you're an avid film watcher like we are, you hear Dan O'Bannon, you think of Return of the Living Dead. So that, then of course Return of the Living Dead hadn't came out yet, but here we are in 2025. You hear that name, you know who Dan O'Bannon is, how awesome he was. You know Tommy Lee Wallace, from Halloween 3, Friday Night 2,
classic.
It miniseries. Like you hear these names, like I said, it's just like, oh man, I know who he's talking about there.
Yep.
So.
And so they did a rough cut. They did a what you would call, I guess, a test screening.
Yep.
Appeared to be a little too short. There wasn't enough violence.
Yep.
Because we always need more violence. And we can't talk about that violent scene at the beginning on the ship without talking about a blood and guts staple. One of our favorite character actors of all time, the legendary, the great Buck Flowers. That's right. And that scene with Buck Flowers on the ship, it's kind of got that red light tone coming in. It kind of builds that ambience. The fog comes rolling into that ship, and they all get slaughtered one by one, as they do in traditional John Carpenter fashion. But that scene is just great. And, they also added the scene at the beginning with John Houseman.
Yeah, telling the stories.
And I had read somewhere that I don't remember if it had came down to Houseman or Orson Welles, or if Houseman was doing more of an homage to Welles at that point, or they had once been friends and later on became enemies, and that's a whole different Hollywood story for a different video.
Yeah.
But that kind of builds the tone. Is just this. You think about, we got to go back and do some reshoots, some add-ins. What are we going to do? We're going to have a classic Hollywood star as an old-timey ship captain sitting on the beach, telling the story to the children. And it's not a pleasant story. It's a very, very scary story. And you just get that scene where it's him sitting there, and he's like, it was on the anniversary of the night. It's such a classic scene. John Houseman, the legendary actor in there.
Like I said, you hit the nail on the head, too. And like, talking about the cast, like we had Buck Flowers and Tom Houseman, like you're talking about. They got Adrian,
this is an all-star
cast.
Adrian
Adrian
all-star
Barbeau,
cast.
just running down real quick. Adrian Barbeau. You got Tom Atkins.
The man, M.F. Atkins.
Jamie Lee Curtis, who's like coming off successes like Terror Train, Halloween. Like so, she's really building up. I can't remember Prom Night came out before this or not too, but I mean she's getting that being famous for being a scream queen. And so like stopping there just for a second, that's another fun fact about this movie. She's just really. She's not the lead. I mean, I'll say maybe she's got a big part in this movie. But she's not the lead. Adrian Barbeau is your
Stevie Wayne. She's your classic lead with that smoky voice, man.
But the marketing is like, what? We got to get on this hype train with Jamie Lee Curtis. That's why you see her on the poster.
Exactly.
She's in a lot of the trailers and stuff where they're really pushing her to be out there. Where it's almost not necessarily. I ain't gonna say a bait and switch, but kind of like you're saying, trying to advertise her as the heavy lead in this one when it's really not.
It's really smart for a low budget like this to do that because Adrian Barbeau is that voice, and Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, was the face on the poster. But when you look at Barbeau's performance in this with her voice, mimicking this disc jockey from L.A. during the time period who had a certain nickname, who was really this very sensual late night voice that everybody wanted to listen to, And by the way, they used the jazz music because they, of course, it's royalty free, so they're saving coin there too, by not having to pay for promotions for artists' IP material. Right. So that's a really good way to go about it. But her voice is just so great in this. It's so sultry, and I love it. It just
and like going back to like we were talking about the man Tom Atkins, and
Tom the
what
man.
I love about him playing Nick Castle in this movie is he's still doing Tom Atkins things. You see him
Tom Atkins
picks up Elizabeth Jamie Lee Curtis in the first 5 minutes, and then the next scene they're already in bed together.
And he's of course driving. and drinking a cold beer.
Yep. Offers her one like a true gentleman that he is.
Yep. Offers her a beer. And let's talk about the father.
Yeah. Hal Holbrook.
Hal Holbrook, Creep Show fame, classic. You know who Hal Holbrook always reminded me of the writer Kurt Vonnegut. Like I feel like they should have, and this is a side note, they should have at some point done a film about Kurt Vonnegut and cast Holbrook as Vonnegut. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But he just has this classic, like he's a character that you want to believe, but he's also a character that like you feel trust with him because he seems like so genuine. And it almost brings it out when he finds the diary.
Yes.
By accident. When he finds the diary and he's reading it and he realizes what his ancestors have done, what the town has done,
and what they're going to have to do.
And what's going to have to happen is you can hear this sadness in his voice. It's almost like I didn't sign up for this, but now we're going to have to deal with it.
Right.
And you can hear that sadness if you watch that scene. And I love that. I absolutely love that scene. It's very darkly lit.
Yes.
There's like some candles, some wine, and he's, damn, what a good scene that is.
Yeah, and like I said,
gives me cold chills.
I'm glad you brought him because for me, when I watch this film, he is the unsung hero of this one because, it's almost like the best way of putting it is he's like a tortured soul, like I said, because he does find the diary. He's
trying to do the right thing.
Seen what his grandpa, like how they hoodooed those pirates back in the day.
Yep.
And so, like I said, just watching him having to deal with that and, like I said, figure out what steps have to be done, what they're after, and how this is basically going to be driven by revenge.
And you know what's great about this whole scene is if you took the same scene now and you had it in a current movie, it would appear as a flashback. And there maybe would be dialogue, probably not, though.
Yeah, some exposition thrown in there.
Exactly. But instead, in this scene, him reading from the diary, and as his voice gets more and more dramatic, it almost provides that exposition for you where it's like you hear the desperation in his voice. Yeah. And he's like, God have mercy on our soul. And it gets worse and worse and worse as he reads. It's so haunting. That is one of my favorite scenes in the whole film. Yeah. So...
No, like I said, that well said. Like I said, he's fantastic. Moving right along then with some of the other heavies that we got Janet Leigh playing Kathy Williams, who's just worried about that centennial celebration.
Jamie Lee's mama.
Yeah, Jamie Lee's mom. And like I said, she's fantastic in her own right. Like Psycho, she's an icon.
Yep. You
got Nancy Loomis, who's a John Carpenter regular. She's playing Sandy Fidel, but everybody's going to know her. As Annie from Halloween, and playing. Tom Atkins' wife in Halloween 3. So she's a heavy. And one of my favorite characters, too, who's only in a few scenes, but he does a great job in those scenes, is Charlie Cyphers playing Dan O'Bannon, the meteorologist, and watching him, his banter with Stevie.
His turtleneck sweater, every scene.
And just like, obviously we have spoilers in here. Like, we expect the movie's 45 years old now. You think you've seen it, but you haven't. Stop here, so we don't give away any major spoilers.
Go watch it. It's awesome. Make sure you put the lights out when you watch it.
But I love the scene where the fog's rolling in and it hits the meteorologist's place, and you have Stevie telling him, don't go open the door, just leave it alone. But he just totally doesn't pay attention to her, goes and opens the door. And just the mood and the setting of that, and just seeing those shadows grab him and kill him.
Yeah, and like the way that Dean Cundy, the way that they had lit these shots. And because fog is very hard to manipulate.
Right.
It's so hard. You have to backlight it. You have to underlight it. There's a special kind of fog that rolls in on the ground. There's the Horror Nights kind of fog that rolls in like mid-waist level.
Yeah.
There's all different kinds of fog out there. And you can put dry ice in it to make it float toward the ground, kind of thing. But the way that they had to work with, this was way before any kind of awesome CGI.
Oh, yeah.
So they're having to manipulate this with fans, with people, with, what are they, giant, just pretty much like cardboard kind of
trying
flaps.
to guide it where they want to go.
Trying to just fan it like you would a fart, almost, like wherever you want it to go. But...
No, you're exactly right. But rounding out the cast, we already touched on George Butt Flowers. Like I said, he's only in one scene in the movie, but it's a scene stealing performance.
I love Buck Flowers.
Rob Bottin playing the Captain Blake, like they say, he has a voiceless part, but like just his presence and his size, like, does a great job. But last but not least, this is the one I love the most about it because it's uncredited, but you got John Carpenter showing up for just one little cameo, and it has Bennett Tramer.
Yep.
So Ben Tramer for Halloween. Like I said, I love how he reuses the names, but I love in his just little scene, all he's worried about from the priest is,
Can I get
paid?
Can I get paid? You need anything else from me? Can I
we
get
can
paid?
all relate to that in this world with our jobs. When can we get paid?
Yep. Paid me. That's right.
Moving right along then, we're already touching a little bit on the plot. One thing I love about it, like without going into every scene in detail, is a simple story about revenge. And like I said, he just does a fantastic job of writing it and setting those characters, putting them in motion. I love it when Atkins finds the dead bodies on there, and even though they're like on the ship, they basically like drown. They got water in their lungs, and they're trying to figure out how that happened.
That scene at the morgue where
Yeah,
the body gets off the table.
terrifying.
This is one of the most terrifying scenes, and it's just so simple. There's not a lot of trickery. There's not a lot of, there's special effects makeup, but as far as like camera angles and trickery, there's not a lot. It's just a corpse getting off a table at the morgue.
Yeah.
And terrifying the shit out of Jamie Lee Curtis.
And we've talked a lot about Dean Cundy, like you're talking about in the scene here in the morgue and how he lights things. That's the beauty of this movie too. Like I said, when you see the shadowy figures in the fog, that's what makes it more terrifying.
Oh yeah,
it's like because like you're like, what's in the fog? What's coming out? And it's just when I watched this as a kid, like I said, it's one of the few movies that did actually terrify me because when I'm first watching, like I don't really understand what's going on. I just know it just scares the crap out of me.
Right, and let's take a quick break for Horror Nights, for our Horror Nights fans out there that enjoy this kind of stuff. Back in the old times, when they would rip off houses without getting the property rights, they had a house called the Forsaken, and it was definitely an homage to the Fog. Except the dead pirates, of course their eyes were wearing green glowing effects in their eyes, almost like goggles that would glow.
Yes.
So it had that they're coming out of the fog. And so, kind of as a tip of the hat, we can't get the rights to the Fog, so let's make our own. So
Next best thing.
Next best thing. So this is back when they would rip off films without getting the intellectual property rights. So this is a quick throw over to Horror Nights for you guys. But let's talk about the scene, Stevie Wayne on top of the lighthouse.
Oh, man.
And so she had to act in reverse. Adrienne Barbeau had to act in reverse.
That takes a lot of talent.
Because the fog, the winds were going. So the fog, they kept losing. And if you've seen the scene, you know what we're talking about. The winds were blowing, so they kept losing the fog. So, in order to maintain the scene, they had the fog coming in. They had her act in reverse.
Right.
So that the fog could appear to billow in more instead of float outward.
Right.
Which is really great.
And it's like I said, it's a testament how great an actress she is, how great John Carpenter is at directing. And I'm pretty sure he edited this one too. I can't remember if he actually had someone about whoever's doing the editing to be able to cut it up and have, like I said, have the pacing, the tension built up. Like I said, it's a fantastic scene.
Oh yeah, and it just builds this. She's climbing up, and she's already on top of the lighthouse. And when you see what builds it up, you see that there's 300, 400 stairs all the way down to the lighthouse. It's on the side of a cliff, and then she's now on the very tip top of the lighthouse. So she's high up. She's over the ocean and the rock, the cliff, and she's having to fight for her life.
Yeah, she's stuck in a rock in a hard place.
Exactly. And the fog is coming in. The pirates are coming in to get her, and so what you feel those heights?
You do,
in that scene.
And it's not only that they like I said, I keep going back to her performance too, though, because not only is she worried about herself, obviously in that scene trying to get away, she's still worried about her son because she don't know if anybody saved her son. So you got that emotional investment there too.
Yep.
Like I said, it's just well written, well acted, well shot, just fantastic.
It's one of my favorite Carpenter, and it's hard. If you ask me right now to pick my favorite Carpenter film, I can't really pick my favorite, but it's right up there.
Yeah, I can tell you my least favorite.
Yeah, I can tell you my least favorite Carpenter films. There's a few of them, but as far as ranking my favorite ones, you've got They Live, New York, Big Trouble, this
Halloween.
one, Halloween, of course. Hell, I even like vampires.
Oh,
And
I know he disowns it, but I love Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
I love Memoirs. But this, if you're looking for a good Carpenter film to watch, and I particularly, I like this one at Halloween. I like to play this one at Halloween. I like to play this one, but you're looking at Patty's Day's coming up. It's March. It's about to be spring. The cool winds, the cool air is hopefully subsiding soon. Maybe put this one on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one last thing before we get to our Goldblum scale, one thing we hadn't touched on as well is, of course, with every John Carpenter film, you got his score and how fantastic it looks. It does it like I said, the way they filmed it, the fog rolling in, the scenery, how they set up the shots. But the music is just that last touch that sets the mood for the entire movie and gives it that creepy factor. And so, like with majority of his movies, John Carpenter knocks it out of the ballpark. And like I said, absolutely love what he done with the score. How about you? You feel the same way?
I love it. And I love that scene. The opening scene, of course, with the car or the truck. Tom Atkins. Driving through the little side roads, and you have the fog coming in over the beachhead, and then I especially love the scenes too where it shows the radar, the green radar screen.
You see the fog bank,
and you see the fog banks. You see the little blip going around, and that shit just brings this tension,
Yep.
And she goes, "There's a fog bank, South by," she kind of gives the coordinates.
Tells Rebecca Flowers, I can't name the boat. She's like, y'all are getting ready to roll into it.
Yeah, and he looks out the window and he's like, "Oh, that's bullshit." I can't see that in his Buck Flowers, voice. I just what an all-star cast for this too. I mean, to pull this cast for such a low-budget film, and to make it work.
No, you're right, because low budget, like I said, it was made for $1.1 million. Went on to gross $21.3. So, I mean, $21.3 million out of a $1 million budget.
Yeah,
they definitely got their return on investment on that.
And this is just one that also solidified to the studios that Carpenter and Halloween, did a similar thing. This is one where they're like, you know what? Maybe we ought to pay attention to this guy.
He's not a flash in the pan.
Yeah, maybe we should pay attention. Maybe we should give him some money to make some more films, and they did.
Yeah. And that's how he got. I mean, that's how he got into that issue where, hey, you promised you'd do Halloween 2 before you do. I can't remember what movie it was next. It was like now you've got to write Halloween 2.
Right, and I mean, just do yourself a favor, Children of the Night. Go check this out if you have not seen it, and if you have, and it's been a while, go ahead and check it out again for sure.
So then on the Goldblum scale, then we're right at it, since we're recommended. What do you give on the Jeff Goldblum scale?
I'm going 5. I'm going 5, yeah. Five Goldblums for this one.
Dude, I'm right there with you. 5 Goldblums, because we've already said it multiple times. You got the cast, score, cinematography, the story, just the performances themselves. Perfect. Like I said, it's perfect. Like you said, I love putting it on around Halloween. I can watch it. This one I can pop in and watch year round as well. So,
and I don't know what it is too about a nautical theme though. Mm-hmm. Like with Horror Nights with Dead Man's Pier. Oh my gosh, like if you have a nautical theme. And you're like, we're going to start our story with an old ship captain. Mm-hmm. And he's telling you a cautionary tale. Like he's not telling you a fairy tale. Yeah. This is a warning story. And he's sitting there and he's like, it was on a night just like it was tonight. I'm in. Yeah. I don't give a shit what it is. I am in.
Sold.
Sold. So you got John Houseman playing him.
Yeah.
And it maybe could have been Orson Welles. Maybe it could have been Houseman. Whatever. I don't care. I am in.
No, I'm with you, dude.
Yeah.
So, Friends and Fiends, there you have it. We both give it 5 stars. We think it's a fantastic film for John Carpenter and that cast. So, if you've seen it, obviously, like we expect most of you to see it, let us know in the comments. How do you feel about The Fog? And actually, before we close, what did you think about the remake?
Nah.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly.
What remake?
Yeah, we may cover that one later because that'll really get his blood going. But let us know in the comments how you feel. Be sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with your friends.
As always, stay spooky.